Warm welcome to the Spiritual Scientist podcast. Our guest today is Thomas Meyer, and Thomas is an author, writer, and a publisher who started Perseus Publishing, and he's based in Arlesheim in Switzerland. And I got to know of Thomas's work through Terry Boardman, who's also been a guest on this podcast. And Thomas also runs courses and seminars and sometimes gives lectures. And Thomas, I'd really like to warmly welcome you to the podcast today. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, I think it is not an accident that we have now this day, 14th of May, which date is in 1947, the date of an important speech of Winston Churchill in Albert Hall, in which speech he pronounced more directly than anywhere else, I think, the necessary idea, what he calls the creation of an authoritative, all-powerful world order is the ultimate aim towards which we must strive. World supergovernment. Unless this can be set up, there is no prospect for peace and human progress. So he speaks about the long-range aim in erecting the European Union, which is only part of a bigger body, namely this all-powerful world government. That's the real aim. So I think some Europeans are naive in Churchill. He was in Switzerland, he was in Lausanne, but he was not a friend of the Middle Europeans. I think this is an objective statement. He was a friend of the power friendship with the Americans, of course. And I think Germany, he disdated, he hated in a way. So this reflects his idea about all authoritative super government, which is actually more or less now there. We have this, more or less. So this is an important historical day, and I'm happy that we have slipped over from yesterday to today to find this coincidence. And I think everyone should know this quote of Churchill. I showed it lately or a year ago to Daniele Ganser. He didn't know it yet. You know Daniele Ganser?
No, I don't.
No. Well, he's a popular speaker on all global affairs in Switzerland and I think in Germany as well. Daniele didn't know this, and many friends don't know this. And I think it's a key for the intention to build a Europe without the necessary really aid of Germany.
And who was Churchill addressing in that speech? So I think you said it's the 14th,
It was
14th
in
of
the
May,
Albert Hall. I think
1947.
it was a public speech in the Albert Hall in London. Unfortunately, we didn't find a picture. We just published an article by Terry in which this speech is also mentioned, and he wanted to have a photo, but there is no photo. He only found a photograph of some hall in Manchester, and I think it is more important. It was in the Albert Hall in London, and it was just about short time, 2 years or less, after his famous speech in Zurich in Zurich. He gave a speech that is very welcomed still today, in which he has a different tone. He doesn't directly say this, what he says here in London. I think to his compatriots, he could be more open. What really matters in the construction of the European Union is what he brings here. It's only the first step. And of course, it has to be kept under Anglo-American control. So that shows the whole problem also of the European Union, which is a misconstruction in my view. It can never work in a real good way unless you use it as an instrument for wider power aims. So Albert Hall, 14th of May, 1947. World state, where we are today to a certain degree.
Okay, and so when you say that we are there to some degree today, what do you mean by that? So what groups control? Who are we talking about here?
Well, groups, Well, yes, of course, you have the known Masonic groups, you have the Jesuits, which are going hand in hand in a way. They seem to have fights, but on the large scale, they combine with them. Well, one great thing I learned from a lecture by Steiner, I think in 1920, I can give you the quote later, in which he speaks about 4 initiation sciences in the world. Jesuits, Masons, and then he speaks about Anthroposophy, that would be the third one, and the youngest. The first 2 have a long history. A long history which gives them a lot of power and influence. And the fourth one is, of course, the most modern, or the third one, the most modern of all, but it has a difficult time to establish itself in the world, because it's not about power, it's not about creating and preserving power structures, it's about developing individual faculties.
So are you referring to anthroposophy?
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. And I think in these groups that were named now Masonic and Jesuits, Anthroposophy is well known, of course. We know one of the former popes, the Slavic Wojtyla, who was very acquainted with Anthroposophy. I think he subjectively even liked it, if you can say that. But of course, he could never use his likes officially as a pope. Impossible. So he was in a very contradictory, I think, situation as a human being. But they know it. And anthroposophy, I'm not speaking about anthroposophers. Anthroposophy is taken serious by the power centers in the world. They know about it. And they know this anthroposophy could have the power to renew all public and private structures. But we don't want that. They are absolutely, Yeah,
It's
and
interesting. It's interesting. Sorry, Thomas. It's interesting that you say that about these power structures that they know about anthroposophy.
yes,
Yeah, I just spoke to someone recently who's got close ties in the US government, and he said that many people in the US government, senators, etc., they are well aware of Rudolf Steiner and his work and anthroposophy.
yes,
They don't say anything about it out loud on the news or anything, but
yes,
there are these people within government who know about it. So it's just interesting.
yes. But would you think that inspires hopes that these people can become anthroposophists by knowing about it?
I don't know, but maybe it's the opposite.
It's the opposite.
Mm.
You know, and I forgot before when I said there are four initiation-based occult streams. I left out the first one, which is unusual. The first one is Bolshevik. There is a Bolshevik initiation principle, Steiner says.
Uh-huh.
Yes. At that time, I mean, it was Lenin, and there's a reference to certain masters behind Lenin, even
Mm.
Lenin. And there is also an initiation aspect in Bolshevism, crude materialism, of course. And these three bodies, Bolshevist, Jesuit, Masonic, are so strong that anthroposophy is an infant, so to speak, over against them, but it has to endure a long time to become more strong. And anthroposophists should see that clearly. They should not think we can compromise with Masons and others, with the EU. I have met when I was churning and writing one book. I was ending up in Brussels, and I had a conversation. I forgot the name, with a nice, kind man who was working within the European Union structure. And he said, well, I'm sure threefold anthroposophy is coming. I found this rather naive. It will never come within these structures. Never. I think I'm online here with Terry and others. This is just naive. The European Union was never designed to bring something like the fourth occult stream or institution like anthroposophy into existence. Never. And on the contrary, it was there to prevent that something like that comes, because this is looked like a big challenge that these persons in these institutions don't want to take. The challenge of the youngest of these four occult streams. You could even go further and say the three first named, Bolshevist, Masonic, and Jesuit, they have a shadow, a force, which we can talk about as the Hashver stream. This has nothing to do with individual Jews. Mind you, if it may help you, I had a great life friendship with some Jewish people because of our author, Barbara Carlin. Carlin had extraordinary youth and childhood experiences, bringing her back in consciousness to the Second World War, to the Holocaust. She was the most known Holocaust victim of the world, Anne Frank. You have heard about Anne Frank.
Yes.
She knew everything about Anne Frank. And I tell this story because of making it clear that there have no bias with Jewish people, because I was great friends with the cousin of Anne Frank, who lived in Basel. Her father lived in Basel, Otto Frank. He died near Basel, and the cousin was going on with his wife, living in Basel. And whenever Carlene visited Switzerland, she stayed in the family of Budi Elias, who is the nephew of Otto Frank. Otto Frank is the father.
Mhm.
You know? So this is a destiny connection that allows me to be open, but also critical, and have good relations with noteworthy Jewish personalities, of course.
Mhm. Yes, I understand that clear. I understand that perfectly. It's just the YouTube algorithm, but we can sort it out.
Okay,
Yeah,
you do what
yeah.
you want. If you have to cut something out, cut it out. But I mean, it's horrible. Why? It's just free opinion. Is
Yeah,
free opinion,
yeah,
that's another subject for us,
yeah.
is still actual in Europe? Where are we going with free opinions? Well, you see, the subject of Anne Frank and Barbara Colleen brought many things out to the open. Resistance of churches against the becoming known of a story like Anne Frank's, Barbara Colleen. They had problems because they couldn't control it. It was coming from an individual, and this is uncontrollable. But I think that will be the destiny of the future, that there are more and more people and young people who come with experiences that nobody can control. And the control freaks, which are sitting in the Masonic and the Jesuits and the Bolshevik, if you like, centers, they are not happy with these things, but they will happen. So it's very good that you maintain, as I understand, a free platform.
Right.
Maybe you,
I try to.
yes, very good. And it is important that we have this mentality. Freedom in abstract sense does not mean anything. And I mean, we hear often, maybe even in the war situation, Ukraine is, of course, fighting for freedom and democracy, all these phrases, hopeless phrases, I think, don't help us further.
No, no, I agree. Um, so something you said in there about, these different initiation principles.
Yes,
How do you see we've just had a change of Pope,
yes.
um, where we have a new Pope. How do you do you see anything changing there, or is this just another person inside a huge structure that already acts in a certain way?
I think one shouldn't place too high hopes on any pope. The last one who just died was according to the um, public commentator in America, Napolitano. You know Napolitano? He is a very witty and well-informed commentator, and he is acquainted with the philosophy of Thomas Aquinas. So he's a man with some degree, I think. And he made a comment that the last pope who just died was probably the worst pope of the papal history ever. Because, and then he enumerated a few things which he thinks don't make him a really good pope. The present one, well, I don't know, has sympathies. He was in Peru, I think, for 3 years. He knows Peru, he knows the poor people, and he doesn't seem to be so authoritarian like the seated one. But the church is the church. And the church is not there for liberating humanity. I think Steiner once said, the best thing the church could be is to work on its own dissolution. It's individualism. It's the individual. And the church has not a greatest esteem for individualism. So I think one should see that clear. It might seem a little bit better and different, but I think one should not be deceived by appearances of that sort.
Mm-hmm. And do you see, does the church in a way fit in with this structure of what Churchill was talking about on the 14th of May,
Yes,
1947, that it's a part of this, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the founder fathers of Europe were devout Catholics. Nothing against be Catholic, but the Catholic basis is not able to provide the free structures necessary for a free development in our society. They are just old things, and they might be very change resistant, so to speak. So I don't have great hopes. I think if you see, we were having an European meeting on Saturday, the day when the Pope was buried. The Vatican and Rome was full. I don't know, many, many, many thousands or 100,000s of people came to say goodbye and show their allegiance to the church. So what? The church is not helping us out of this abyss of tremendous crisis.
What is this abyss of tremendous crisis that you speak of? What do you mean by that?
Well, if we look at the Ukraine, it's terrible. It goes on and on and on. And if you look at the game of, there's one person who is guilty of all this, and he has now also got the name, the man who made an attacking war. I don't know how you say that in English. Angriffskrieg. This is a coin.
Okay, the one who attacked, the provocateur, yeah, I can't think of the word.
But the journalists are told to use the same phrase since years, Angriffskrieg, to characterize the attacking way of Russia. But what was before, I mean, you know that probably, the provocation of Russia with the NATO, with approaching Russia. And Putin has clearly said many times, there's a no-go, there is a limit. And they don't respect that. So all the provocations summed up in one day, going into Ukraine, But I think they don't want, of course, to have the Ukraine back or something. It was just necessary to make a sign, stop, that is going too far. And of course, it's unfortunate wherever people and young people dying, what for? And I'm not thinking that Putin is a saint, but he is, I think, among all the public figures today, almost the only one, maybe with his colleague Lavrov together, who gives speeches which have some thoughts in it. They are well thought through, whereas usually famous politicians, we would even include Trump to a certain degree, they just blah blah.
Mhm.
So Putin knows what he is talking about, at least. And but the whole situation now, I hear this morning, Trump is now getting nearer to the Saudis and sees the Saudis as the new power ruling things in the Middle East, including the mess of Israel there, so to speak. I don't know how this is going to end, but we have power, power, power. These are the 3 or 4 initiation elements. Power. But where do you have knowledge or wisdom in all this?
Or love.
Very what?
Or love.
Or love. Yes, of course. Yes,
Can I just ask about what
please.
what you think about Putin as well? Because I think what I've noticed in the public discourse is it seems like, and we're all guilty of this, we have difficulty if we think this person's bad or this thing's bad, then this must be good over here.
Yeah.
And vice versa. If we think, this is good, then we think this must be bad. And we have difficulty seeing the gray area. So I think it's important that you said, we're not saying Putin is the good guy all the time or anything like that. And I mean, he did have he was a part of the World Economic Forum young leaders and things
Yes.
like that. So I sometimes wonder, is he just playing his role in amongst the whole world situation, or is he really antagonistic to the West? I mean, the West has set Russia up as the enemy, similar to, I think maybe you would agree with this, similar to what the West did with Germany in the lead up to the First World War. I don't know if that's what's happening now. What are your thoughts about all that?
Well, there's a similar situation with the First World War, indeed. But there you have, I can say that to you as an independent um, person, I hope, you are aware that the First World War was in a way managed by the British groups, the elites. I know the book, the book by, what's their names? There is a very good historic book which shows that the people who pulled the
Pull the strings.
exactly
Yeah.
were all in the
Is it
West.
Carol Quigley? The Carol Quigley
No,
books?
no, no, no. He was after Quickly. Quickly is also he was paved the way, so to speak, and these authors knew Quickly,
Oh, is it
knew.
Anthony Sutton, Dr. Anthony Sutton? Um, no, he's more talking about the Second World War, I think. He wrote Wall Street and the
He was
Bolshevik
also
Revolution.
instrumental in opening the eyes of many people, Sutton, indeed. But these two Scottish authors,
Oh,
I'm sure you know the name. No?
probably it's not coming to me.
Yes, okay, it will come. It will come after the recording. They did a very good work, excellent, and showing that all the West had an interest in this First World War. And a similar situation is today, the interest in the Ukraine crisis never ending. Listen to people like Macron and others. And unfortunately, I must say, because I'm in great sympathy with the spiritual history of Germany, of course, but Germany today is a puppet, is just powerless and wants to run into this disastrous Ukraine war. Why? They have lost their spiritual identity, the Germans. They have been so badly put into the mud of evil with the Holocaust that they can always be taken there so that they don't go too far and they don't get really independent. This is a tragedy with Germany today. And Switzerland, I'm saying this as a Swiss, is not much far of it.
Oh, is that right? So Switzerland, it's not as independent as it seems, or
Yeah, as it was. They throw neutrality out of the window, the officials. You know, they want to become members of the international club of Churchill's one world government. That's what they want. And they have lost, in a way, the sovereignty also of Switzerland. Maybe not to that degree that in Germany, but it's a process that is frightening, I think.
I lived in Germany for 4 years in Hamburg,
Oh,
and yeah, I was wondering. It's a big question for me around this. The soul of that country that it's been through so much suffering from all different angles. Some of it obviously from within the country itself. But I'm always interested in what's happening today in Germany because I wonder, there's obviously this trauma that's been passed down through the generations, and the people still carry a lot of the weight of the past, of the history. But do you think that that is changing or can change as the generations move forward? I mean, I think in their education, they're still continually reminded of what happened in the past. So, but maybe it will take a long time. But do you think that's changing or can change?
difficult questions. I'm not too positive. Difficult questions. I mean, Germany is still not a free nation. They're still bound by law to the allies of 45. They are not independent, not even
No.
legally. So I don't know what should happen in Germany.
Because
But
sorry, go on, please.
if you look at the new chancellor, he goes with the Western politics, and he was a representative of the American rich money firm called, it, you know it. You should know it. I don't know it.
Oh, I don't know. We took JP Morgan or Chase Bank or
No,
something like that.
no, 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 no. They make internet connections and business with computers. They are
Microsoft.
very what?
Microsoft.
Similar, but even
Yeah.
more powerful.
Okay.
Yeah, it comes after the recording.
I'll write it into the the description of the video after. If people have
If
questions,
you like.
things that we forgot or we didn't know, I'll write them
Right.
down. Yeah.
Good,
Yeah.
good, good.
Yeah.
Yes.
So maybe where we could go next with the conversation is, look, we've looked a lot at the big picture, and something that really interested me in what you said there was that this whole system that we're living within, this new world order that Churchill was speaking about, which in some ways we live within now. You mentioned that they don't like individuals, they don't like individual freedom. You spoke about Anne Frank and this other person who had spiritual perceptions of Anne Frank after death and all those things. And my wife, this is something my wife often says, that they've got all these control systems that they're trying to keep us living within, and yet human beings are that we're radical. There are always free radicals appearing here and there who are sort of free within themselves. So do you have hope that things can change because there are free individuals or people who have insight or people who do stand up and do things, or not?
Absolutely. No. I am positive. Basically, I'm optimistic. But my optimism is not based on large societies of people, because the society of people who are individual, in a good sense, individualists, is small. In America, you had the great spirit of Ralph Waldo Emerson, which I admire. But look how popular Emerson is today. He's almost not there.
Right.
But the force of Emerson's individualism, I think, is going on. And what counts for every free community, I think, don't be dazzled by quantity. How many are we? It is more important to have free individual communities than to count how many people are there. There was once, even Steiner gave a lecture in which he said daring things in the First World War. I know you know the book. Terry Bowman has had a hand in publishing it. Analysis of all these occult streams. And at the end of a lecture, Steiner was asked, Dr. Steiner, it seems that we are so powerless compared to these mighty streams in the world of power. What can we do? And then Steiner said, and he was someone who had some chauvinistic attitudes, a bit nationalistic. And he said to him, if you, Mr. So-and-so, now turn away from your chauvinistic attitudes and take the spiritual facts that he tries to show in these lectures, that is what counts. And the spiritual world doesn't count numbers, how many people, but if there are people who see through all these illusions, that counts already, that counts. So the quantity is like we can be hypnotized by numbers. I mean, I experienced that on a very simple personal level sometimes. If you go somewhere and give a lecture, the first question is, how many people were there? And this is not essential, but this is very important. If you say 2,000, oh, they're greatly impressed. If you say 5, there was nothing. This is wrong. I think we should really, if we work with anthroposophy, we should appreciate the substance of the thoughts and of the deeds more than the quantity. Of course, quantity is not to be neglected totally. There is a border, but it is not the primordial point of view.
Yeah, I remember reading Steiner saying that, he maybe was giving a lecture to a lot of people, but really he was only talking to one or two people there who he sensed would be able to carry these ideas forward into the world. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there were cases where I think he had an audience of 3 people in Vienna to begin with. Very few people. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just my own opinion on this is that, and I've been very guilty of this myself, but falling into thinking we'll find a political solution, we'll find a solution, in the outside world that will transform things. And, we have the concept of the threefold social order. We have structures that could influence, but really it's small groups of people or individuals working on their own inner freedom, I think, and then bringing that into the world through their own work and their own communities that makes a difference, that changes things. That's my own take on it.
I totally agree with that. And if you want to have a historical view on quantity and minorities, then look at all the great cultures when they went down. Atlantis. Who were the people who brought the next step in evolution? Who were in Asia? Minorities. Few groups about some, well, great leader at that time. What will happen in the 7th period, where we will have, according to Steiner, the great war against all in the Slavic? No, not in the Slavic. It's called the American epoch. At the end, there will be only few people carrying on the seed of evolution. Few, not the masses. That's a law. I think that is repeating itself. And so this is the right view. We must see that we have anthroposophical substance, not diluted, as it is often happening today, diluted. But we have to strengthen it. And even if there are only few communities, that's better than a diluted, broad audience, but diluted.
Yes. Yeah, and I think having this conversation on here is it's a two-edged sword, because it can have the potential of a very wide audience.
Yes.
But also my hope is that uh, small groups of people, or maybe just individuals, hear something that triggers something that leads them to read further or study further. That's really what we're doing here. So
I mean, as you know, that I wrote books. The book that was a key for my own development was the book on Dunlop. Have you heard about him?
I have. Yeah, maybe you could tell us a little bit for the audience who Daniel Dunlop was.
Well, he was the founder of an institution in England, World Power Conference, where he wanted to bring all the technicians, electricians together.
That's right. Sorry, could I just, sorry, just to point out, he's talking about power as in electricity, not
Exactly.
not power as
Yes.
in power over the
No,
world. So,
that's very,
yeah,
thank you. That's
yeah.
very, very important. And his institution, his conference he made, it's World Energy Council today, still exists. I visited them a year ago in Rotterdam, and I was amazed how present the founder, Ian Dunlop, still was, and respected. I was really amazed. There was a respect, even if you can see they seem to go off the track from his great ideas. But the respect of Dunlop is still there. And so I regard him as one of the greatest, even to a certain degree, powerful pupils of Steiner's for the present and the future. Like he is even a good, you find examples in his actions of something which you could maybe name white magic, because this is lacking today. There are great people, gifted people, like also the healer in Daskalos. Have you heard of him? Daskalos, Cyprus. He was an amazing healer. He could heal broken spines and whatever. Unbelievable. And in a similar way, Dunlop developed healing powers. And I think all these terrible things going on, including black magic elements today, they can only be counterbalanced by some individuals who have white magic at their disposal. That's a positive outlook for me to the future. And Dunlop was one of the very few, but you know what happened to him? He was like Ita Wegman and others, expelled from the society
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
in 1935. And 5 weeks later, he passed over. I think it was the frame was too narrow for a man like Dunlop's. He passed over for the future. And we have future hopes in these individuals, which are quite considerable.
So he was actually instrumental in bringing Steiner to Great Britain, wasn't he? For the
That's
visits,
true.
the summer
Also,
schools.
they were in Tintagel
Yeah,
together, you
which is
know,
this scene behind me.
right?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Right? No, and we have no concrete idea how strong these few individuals were around Steiner and how they developed after death.
Mm.
You can't speak about that openly, but you can form some ideas. That is important that we have. That's why we did a lot of our books just to preserve the memory. Kaiserling, for example, agriculture, and then that we are memorizing the deeds of these noteworthy people, not for the past, but for the future.
I think that's very, very valuable. And just on that question, Steiner talked about some of these individuals returning to be here around about 100 years later, etc. Do you feel that, if these individuals are now returning or have already returned, that they will be involved in anthroposophy, within the society, within, what's flowing out of the Goethe Arnhem in Dornach, or do you feel like they'll be working in different corners of the world doing maybe things that are more hidden away? What are your thoughts?
In the second direction, rather. Some people who have been thrown out by the authorities of this society, they won't find it appealing to them to be a part of this body of society again. But I think they will inspire anthroposophy wherever they can. And maybe, I mean, Dean Dunlop even once thought he would inspire to his young friend, Walter Stein, to think about a new society called, which is there to advance spiritual science. International Association for the Advancement of Spiritual Science. The name Anthroposophy doesn't appear. And I think there are many people who will just be on the line of anthroposophy, of course, but not on the line of the society that has been, to say it crudely maybe, who has been partly hijacked by the other streams that we have been talking about. Masonic Jesuits, they cannot do that. So the expectation should be look up for people who have their integrity in anthroposophy, but they don't want to compromise in a way that today in the society, this is the rule, so to speak.
So do you think it has been hijacked then? Are we
Some.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if they talk about the WEF and the, what is it?
World Economic Forum.
Yes, and in Geneva, the big, what is it? The society. Yes,
Sorry, go on.
It has been hijacked to a high degree. And of course, put yourself in imagination into the position of a world character like Ahriman. Would you not be interested in all these people who have spiritual ideals, to win them over and to weaken their strength? That's being done today. So we should not have illusions about the society that Steiner founded, that I think after his death, he couldn't be connected directly. He could be directed to individuals like Dunlop, Holzer-Hoditz, Moltke. They could be inspired and led, but not the institution as such, as it has become. But that is the belief of many. I don't know about your country, how many people believe in the integrity of the Anthroposophical Society.
Yeah, depends who you're talking to.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Thomas, maybe just a couple more points before we finish up.
Please.
I noticed recently someone who you've been interviewed by several times, and you've done a series with Katherine Fitz, who was someone who actually worked within the Bush government, I believe, and she was
I know.
recently interviewed by Tucker Carlson on his
Yes,
very popular
I've seen that.
channel, and so you've
Right,
had a
I
lot to
know.
do with her. And I was just very interested in um, because that's quite a big thing. She's obviously interested in spiritual science and anthroposophy to some
Hmm.
degree, to have done a whole series with you, and
Hmm.
then to see her speaking to someone like Tucker Carlson. Yeah, I'm just wondering what your
Yes,
thoughts were on that interview and on Katherine herself.
she is very, very special. She goes her way. Well, she once told me um, the time for deeper study of anthroposophy will only come. She has books and books and books, and she said, one day I will read them. So it is not at that point yet. But she was so open that I had no problem in associating with her, and I don't measure her by her knowledge of the cycle cycles of Steiner. But she is, I think, moving. That's the best I can say.
Mhm. Okay. Okay,
And
thank you.
Tucker Carlson is, of course, doing a good job in interviewing people like her.
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting what's happening there. Yeah. And I think there's something I noticed that they talk a little bit about is I don't know if you've seen this phenomenon. I've talked about it before, but a lot of people who have gone into, for want of a better term, the New Age movement and have
Yes,
sampled all different kinds of spiritual
yes.
paths, etc. What I've noticed in the last few years is this sort of swinging back the other way and really grasping hold of dogmatic Christianity in some form or other, either heading back to the Catholic Church,
Hmm.
into the Orthodox Church, even lots of people in America that's happening. And it's like we've sort of got this opportunity at the moment, it feels like, that to just show people or to point out to people that there is a middle way, a middle path that still involves a relationship with Christianity, with Jesus Christ himself, we could say, that's not this dogmatic, stuck way of being and thinking, but also is not this just completely free, trying whatever you want to try. You know, that
Yeah.
I think people have to go through that process as well.
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm not saying that any of those are wrong, but just to say that there is this middle path, an opportunity. I'm not sure if any of that made sense, but
Yeah, I think we should try to combine both strictness to the substance of anthroposophy, not water it down, and total tolerance to all sorts of ways to find the way to it. We are going to publish a book about some unusual experiences that Steiner had made in Berlin in 1904, 5, 6. He was present at a number of seances, spiritistic, at the question of Eliza von Moltke. That was at that time quite usual, nothing special. But he makes it very clear it is important that if you have these seances, that some people today are quite open to it again. It is important that you have someone present who is a conscious spiritual scientist there, because there are important truths that could be revealed by some method like that, but it's not sure, it's not safe. and you can invite a lot of illusions. And that's a bit problem today. Illusions, openness, I used to say, if you have too much openness and too much air, the danger is great that you get a draft. You understand? Get a draft. So how to find the rigor of anthroposophy, which it is there. It is like a higher discipline of mathematics. You cannot just wishy-washy go into it. And for some people, that is a bit uncomfortable. They would like to have it. Oh yes, today we are all clairvoyants. Maybe you have heard this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a lot of clairvoyance which is lacking of exact thinking, and that's a certain danger. We bring in our next journal an article about Johanna Kaiserling. Have you heard of her?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Yeah. She was highly clairvoyant, Steiner told her. But she had also some experiences of Steiner himself after his death that are totally distorted.
Mm.
Why? Because she was not free of emotions. When she lost Steiner, she lost her guide, and she had an inspiration. I call it a good example of somewhat Arimanized inspiration. You can read it. It's published again. So we need the new age can't be too open, too less guided by common sense. And on the other hand, you have these dogmatic structures which have to be broken out. So to find the balance, it's not always easy.
No, but I think that is the task.
That is the task.
This balance. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
Dunlop was a perfect example.
Right.
He could be with anyone, and he could understand all voices, so to speak, of soul. He was a man with huge experience of different streams of mentalities, etc., etc. So we need people like that.
Well, I must read that book that you wrote on Daniel Dunlop, and I think it's actually I'm here actually in the Christian community in Buckfast Lee in South Devon, and
Yes,
there's a copy of the book here, and actually
good.
several people that I know I've seen that book on their shelves, so it's well known in these parts, Thomas.
Look at
Um,
it. You won't regret it.
Most certainly I will. Um, well, it just leaves me to say thank you very much for this conversation. I hope we can continue this and do this again.
Why not?
And
The times get even worse, so maybe it's good to have another talk sometime.
I think we should. Thank you.
Good.
That would be great. So
Thank you.
you're very welcome. Yeah, no, I really appreciate you being here. And I've heard about you for a long time, and good to finally speak with you. And so
Thank
just
you.
so that people who are listening know, I'll have all the links in the description of the video below to Thomas's website and books and courses and things like that so that people can find you. And what else do I need to say? If people would like to support this podcast so that I can continue doing this, you can do that on Substack. You can do it with Locals or Subscribestar, or I think even on YouTube, you can become a member and contribute a small amount or a large amount that way if you like to, just to help us keep going. So thank you. But yeah, Thomas, once again, thank you very much for being here. And
Thank you very much, yourself.
you're very welcome. Bye for now.
Bye.